her husband's twin. That's the life I never imagined I would be telling you about. My life, where every moral compass I thought I had was tested one quiet evening in late autumn, when my husband's estranged twin, Marcus, walked back into the frame of my world like a shadow I hadn't been ready to confront. The first moment I saw him again, standing at the corner of our kitchen in worn jeans and a crisp white shirt, I felt as if my pulse had been caught between disbelief and something far more dangerous. His eyes, hazel like my husband's, but warmer, steadier, met mine, and the air smelled faintly of burnt coffee and the cedar from his jacket. I had been married to Oliver for 12 years. We'd built what others would call stability, a neat little house with pale yellow walls, a career in event planning that kept me steadily occupied, and the routines of married life, Sunday grocery runs, dinners with friends, anniversaries marked by small but thoughtful gestures. I cherished the knowing sameness of it, or at least I thought I did, until the cracks began to show, not in loud fights or dramatic scenes, but in silences that stretched too long, in nights where he stayed in the study until I fell asleep alone. And then came the note. It was a Thursday evening when I found it on the entryway table, a crisp envelope with "Sorry" written in Oliver's hurried script. Inside, 5 short lines explained he needed space, that he'd be staying elsewhere for a while, that it was not about anyone else but himself. My hands trembled, the paper cutting lightly into my thumb, the faint metallic tang of blood making me oddly aware of the moment. I called him, but it went to voicemail. The house felt cavernous, footsteps echoing off the hardwood, dinner sat untouched on the counter, steam curling away into nothing. I wandered from room to room, my heartbeat loud in my ears, that note feeling heavier than any truth I'd ever carried. 2 days later, Marcus appeared. No warning, just his voice in the doorway saying, "He told me to check on you." It had been years since I'd seen him, years since the fallout between the brothers kept him away. He was more rugged now, flecks of silver at his temples, a quiet confidence in his posture. He took off his jacket and draped it over the chair, the cedar scent mingling with the faint citrus from a candle I had lit. We sat across from each other, the space between us charged in a way I couldn't name. My grief had been a steady thrum, but talking to Marcus shifted something, a gentleness in the way he listened, the way his gaze didn't flinch when mine wavered. Days blurred into evenings where he'd drop by with groceries, fix the leaky faucet, stand beside me at the sink, drying dishes. I told myself it was only gratitude, only comfort in familiar presence. But one evening, as the rain tapped steadily against the windows, we stood too close, his hand brushing mine as he passed me a towel. The touch was nothing more than fingers grazing, but it sent a pulse through me, strong enough to make me step back. Still, I couldn't ignore the magnetic pull that had begun to form. My anger toward Oliver, the hollow ache of betrayal, the loneliness, it all tangled with that pull until I could no longer separate them. I would lie awake at night, the scent of cedar still in the air, remembering Marcus's voice asking how I was holding up, his eyes searching mine as if he already knew the answer. If this confession has you holding your breath and waiting for the next twist, hit like and share, because you will not believe what happens next. The defining night came quietly. Marcus had stopped by to drop off a set of tools Oliver had left at his place. We ended up in the living room with glasses of red wine, the fire casting amber light across his face. He told me things Oliver never had, that he left not because of an affair, but because he felt lost in a life that no longer fit him. That Marcus had been on the outside of both his marriage and his own family for years. I listened, my fingers tracing the rim of my glass, the wine dark and rich against my tongue. There was an intimacy in those shared confessions. A thread binding us in both hurt and honesty. At one point, he reached over, taking my hand without hesitation. His palm was worn, rough from work, and something inside me softened in a way I hadn't in months. We talked late into the night about loss and second chances, about mistakes and the ways people drift without meaning to. I admitted how empty I had felt, how invisible I had become in my own marriage. He kept my hand in his thumb brushing lightly in rhythmic circles, the kind that steadies you and unravels you all at once. The days that followed were tinted with awareness. The way I dressed just a little differently when I knew he'd stop by. The way his presence filled spaces Oliver used to occupy, but with a different kind of energy, one that didn't demand, only offered. We never crossed a line beyond words and touches that lingered longer than they should. But inside, I knew we stood at the edge, and in that space, I felt something I hadn't in years, seen, wanted, alive. Oliver returned 3 weeks later. There was no dramatic confrontation, just an awkward meal where conversations skated over safe topics. But his absence had carved something permanent. Marcus still came by, under the pretense of helping with household repairs. Oliver noticed, but said nothing. The tension was a living thing in our home now. One evening, after Oliver had left for an overnight trip, Marcus knocked softly at the door. He carried 2 mugs of chamomile tea and a look that told me he was just as restless as I was. We sat on the couch, tea steam curling between us. He said, "You are stronger than you think, Olivia." The way he spoke my name, firm yet tender, felt like a promise. And in that moment, I realized forbidden love wasn't always about defiance or wild passion. Sometimes it was about finding the person who sees the pieces of you that have been hidden and gently naming them back to you. Marcus never asked me to choose, and I don't know if I will. Life remains complicated. Oliver and I are navigating a fragile truce. Marcus and I, a silent understanding. But I carry the knowledge that love, even when it arrives in the wrong form, can wake parts of you that you feared lost forever. And that is its own kind of second chance. If you crave more raw, emotional confessions, please like, share, and subscribe. Your next chapter awaits.